Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Oh, look at that. Nice. Okay, so I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but you called it Cha Cha Mong Village, Vietnam? Okay, so basically it's in the close foreground. Seems to be a girl or young woman, kind of westernish, because all you see is her back in kind of a t-shirt and bluish t-shirt, bluish pants, holding
So
onto
that
a
is my
walking stick of
7-year-old
sort.
son, just so you know.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then great hair, and then
So
there's somebody's standing on. It's on a hillside where there's somebody holding what looks like a umbrella on their shoulder, wearing a sort of a cap. It's very green, and it's hillsides, and it's quasi jungle. This is very reminiscent of Hong Kong, where I live now. Actually, and there's it's not a proper water buffalo, but it's one of those cows with a back sort of sweeping horns. Oh, they have them in the Philippines. I don't remember the name of this particular cow. Not as big as a massive water buffalo, but still not massive. And it's on the very lush hillside. It's one of those skies where it's probably has rained or it will rain. So yeah. What is this?
So first, I want to speak to when you said girl versus boy. What I find really humorous, every time we travel in Southeast Asia, everyone thinks my son is a girl. And it's supposed to be a compliment, and it doesn't bother him one bit. It doesn't bother us one bit. But we have had like playful arguments with people who are like, that is not a boy. Like, I swear, the boy. The other day, he walked into a men's room at the train station, and the woman who was in there cleaning was like yelling at him to get out, and like came out, and I had to explain to her in Korean, like, no, boy.
That's funny.
So I think it's, he does have longer hair, which is like culturally you don't see a whole lot of that in Asia, and I think just he has an angelic face that everyone says it just like reminds them of the feminine. So I think that's
well,
yeah.
In the photo, he's not. You can't see him. Like he's small and kind of in the foreground, but not. Yeah. So listen, I'm sure your son is very beautiful, but all I can see is the hair and from the back. So
yeah,
beautiful hair,
absolutely.
great hair.
I mean, it doesn't bother any of us. So that particular photograph was taken in October of 2022 in Sapa in Vietnam. And
nice.
A lot of times when we travel, so Sapa is in the north. A lot of times when we travel, like obviously when we travel, we are going to be tourists. That's just how it is. We are white Americans traveling around Southeast Asia. We do not fit in. We are tourists. But we try to book our travel in order to experience the workaday or day-to-day life of people that live there. So we booked a 3-day trek with the Hmong tribe. So if you're not familiar with the Hmong tribe, they were a nomadic tribe. And there are still a lot, like ethnically, there are still a lot of Hmongs today. And Cha-Cha was her name, our guide. And what she was telling me is that I don't exactly know when, but Vietnam made it illegal for them to travel. For them to be nomadic tribes. So they settled in Sapa, which is, northern Vietnam. So what you're seeing is just part of our walk. She did call it a water buffalo. It might have a different name, but the buffalo just kind of roam around. And at one time she walked up and she's like, oh, that's my buffalo. And there was no particular markings on it to even know, but she's like, oh, I know my buffalo. And that particular buffalo ended up coming back. So we stayed at their house for one night. We stayed at her mom's house one night and her brother's house. We stayed at these various houses during this trek. And I mean, they cooked us amazing food. Everything is on an open fire. There's no refrigerators. There's no running water. It was very bare bones, but it was very interesting for me. And I think exposing my son to that a lot of these tribes, they have very little possessions.
Hmm.
The bed we slept on was very simple. It had mosquito net, and ours was kind of like the fancy part of the
Yep.
home. It's
Yep.
all dirt floors. There's no real furniture beyond like tiny little plastic chairs, and but it was so lovely, and it was they and everyone seemed so unbelievably happy. The kids were happy. My son was just playing with everyone, and you realize in those moments, Cha Cha did speak a little bit of English, and she had learned it over the years from taking tourists on these treks. But like there is no need for language like when you're in specific or certain situations. Like my son had no problem
Hmm.
playing with all of the kids. I don't know like what they were playing. They would find some sort of stick and I mean play with that for hours, and
Sure.
it was really fascinating, and I really enjoy exposing him to that, and like letting him realize like we have entirely too many things in our apartment, and then you go here and there's just like not a need for it.
Right, right. Well, so one of the things that, okay, so the fact that you're American and like, cause, so for example, when I went to Savannah and I meet people and I hear like, there's a lot of the background assumptions, right? That the people I met through my sister and her friends and all this stuff is because it's just the soup that you swim in, right? Then I can sort of imagine you going to Vietnam and then carrying with you, even if it's subconsciously, part of like how does Vietnam as a country fit within your understanding of being either a traveler, but also trying to kind of learn about this culture that which is so far away from the U.S. and is so intimately linked to the U.S. in a way. Was that even a dimension of your travels, or are you just like, well, it was a different time, it has nothing really to doesn't really speak to you directly?
So I try to do my due diligence when I go to a country to kind of learn about its history, and I think that
Hmm.
helps to see things in present day knowing that. And one of the things, really, both traveling around Asia and when I lived in Europe, it made me realize how young and naive our history, our own history, and our own culture is. I mean, I would
Hmm.
see these artifacts and ruins that were so old it went beyond my realm of reality,
Hmm.
because it's not something that you learn in American history because it didn't necessarily exist or it wasn't taught.
Yeah.
So I do kind of take that, and that helps kind of open my mind to what it is. And it's just the realization that people and cultures do things differently, and that's okay. It's not
Oh, for sure.
better or worse, it's just different. There are things that, like, obviously, I feel like the knowledge that we know could help them, and then there's the knowledge that they bring that, like, why haven't we adopted this system? Like, we
Hmm.
can learn so much about each other.
Just I have to interrupt by saying kitchen scissors. Sorry.
Kitchen scissors, yes. I mean, but without like losing our identities, I think is the
Yeah.
important part of that. Like you can still have your culture and
Yeah.
identity, but just like learn the things from each other and how to make things work and how to just care for society and each other better.
Okay. This is like very interesting to me in that. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to geek out. What kind of cameras do you shoot with now?
So I have a Canon Mark III, and are you still there?
I think the call dropped just as you're starting to talk about what cameras you shoot with.
Yeah, I have a Samsung S22 Ultra, and it shoots raw files. So I'm able to manipulate those photos before and post production. So a lot of them have, and really that's just because of travel. I used to schlep my gear all over Europe and all over everywhere. And when you're trying to pack light and you're backpacking, I want to keep it as light as possible.
So where did you learn photography? Self-taught, or did you go to school? Like how did you get so deep into photography?
Well, I did take photography classes in college, but again, I was in a dark room. But you
Mm-hmm.
still learn composition and everything that goes along with it. As far as Photoshop, I really am self-taught, and I just learned by doing. I'm a visual learner. I tend to, especially in my youth, I tend to find people who are doing the job that I want to do. And then I work for them or intern for them or buy them coffee and ask them a bunch of questions.
You're amazing.
That's how I tend to learn. I've never been great at institutionalized education. I think that it's. I don't think it's for everyone. I think that I wish that as a culture we put more energy into like trade schools or really educating people where they are, how they learn,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and other cultures do a bit of that.
Yeah. Well, how about we take that as the cue to move on to a new culture, where we'll see what's in the next photo.
Sounds great.
By the way, I have to interrupt myself to say, Molly, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate how you speak, how you talk about photography, and yeah, you seem really cool. This is fun. This is great.
Thanks so much.
So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting